we're up and at it early. Think you know why. All right, he's going to play while I go do a hike, and I think he's going to stay over here and play while I'm working today too. Lucky him. Alright, I'm going to head over to Runyon Canyon and start our hike for the day. And I'm actually going to be vlogging an apartment over there, so it should be a fun time. Definitely an interesting story along with this building. Well, I've been having a lot of trouble sleeping lately. If I seem kind of irritable, that's why. It's I've never been much of a sleeper, but I always usually kind of sleep 4 hours at night and pretty much 4 hours or 3 hours during the day at some point. And recently I'm barely even getting that 3 or 4 hours at night. I just toss and turn a lot, and then I want to get up early to do these hikes. And because I'm thinking about getting up early to do the hikes before it gets too hot, then I end up not being able to sleep, or I end up sleeping in. So just with my work schedule and for some reason not being able to sleep and stuff, it's just it's been wearing me out a lot. And I need one day pretty soon coming up where I just do nothing and relax and like catch up. So hopefully that day is coming soon. Like I said, I have to work all day today. I have to work all day Saturday, so maybe Sunday or something like that, I don't know. So sorry if I seem irritable. Not directed at anybody, I'm just tired and worn out. And it's not because of vlogging or anything like that, it's just a lack of sleep. In fact, when I was a little worried, because when I was at my doctor's appointment yesterday, they did an EKG on me, and the doctor said, your heart rate's a little low. And I was like, oh, okay. And he said, are you doing anything out of the ordinary? And I said, well, I mean, like the last 2 weeks I've been hiking Runyon Canyon and doing stuff like that. And he goes, oh, okay, that's it. He goes, yeah, if you exercise, your heart rate tends to be a little lower than normal, so everything's cool. But first I thought maybe it was the not sleeping thing. All right, we are here. And that building you see right there in front of us, that was the very first apartment in Los Angeles and on his own that the Beach Boys' Brian Wilson ever had. Now, basically the story was that Brian Wilson was in kind of junior college when the Beach Boys kind of broke out and had their first hit. And he was living at home. His brother Carl and Dennis were still there. And their father, Murray, the tyrant, was the band's manager and constantly running everything, micromanaging everything, and basically just inflicting pain on all the boys as much as possible. The one thing that he probably did do that was good was he made sure that none of the guys were ever able to hook up with girls while they were out playing these shows. But during the time they were finally kind of just getting started and their first single had been picked up and everything, they started doing gigs to get their name out there. And one of the gigs they would play was called Pandora's Box. And at Pandora's Box one night, Brian Wilson met these three sisters, the Ravel sisters. And the oldest sister was Diane, the middle sister was Marilyn, and the younger sister was Barbara. And Brian had always just gravitated towards these sisters, so much so that even though he was older, Marilyn was the middle daughter, she was 16. And so that kind of gives you a gauge as to what the other sisters were. Brian was already 19, 20 years old, and he had kind of been accepted into this family. He would go over and hang out with the girl's parents, May and Irving, and they actually lived not too far from here, just a few blocks actually up this street. And so he would stay with them quite a bit when he couldn't handle being around his parents. His dad was constantly like verbally abusive while he was growing up. His dad even used to keep his glass eye in a glass on the counter when he wasn't wearing it, just to like spook Brian and his brothers, to let him know who was boss. And he would sometimes get so angry that he would stand up on tables and pound his chest and call himself King Kong and things like that. So when Brian finally just couldn't take it anymore, he would spend all of his time at the Ravels. And then all of a sudden, when the Beatles hit, Brian felt this overwhelming sense of competition and felt that he had to do everything he could possible to be better than the Beatles, compete with the Beatles. And dealing with his dad constantly, his dad was constantly trying to force him into selling their publishing company so that his dad could distribute the money, saying that Brian was far too irresponsible to control his own money. That's why he never wanted him to live on his own. Tell Brian he was never good. And part of that was that Murray had put his own albums out at one point and they weren't successful at all. And he didn't want his sons to be more successful than him unless he had a hand in it where he could say, you couldn't have done it without me, which he would end up doing the rest of his life. So Brian was spending so much time at the Revels, and he had all this, come on, traffic. He had all this pressure to want to be better. This is kind of the era when he was writing Fun, Fun, Fun and stuff like that. And they were recording just a few blocks away all the time at Western Studios and Gold Star Studios. So Brian just one day snapped at the girl's mom, just got tired of her talking and just said, like, I need peace and quiet, quit talking. And it kind of put a weird bridge in their relationship. And so Brian started looking for his own apartment. And this would be the apartment that he would end up getting. So when Brian moved here, it was actually like, for many reasons, it was perfect for what he wanted, because he was close to his studio, he was close to the three sisters, and he really had a thing for Marilyn. Even though Marilyn was only 16, he would constantly call her and like beg her to skip school and come hang out with him, keep him company. And he actually, I don't know which apartment it was, but he had a 2-bedroom apartment in here. And he said that he got one overlooking Hollywood Boulevard because when he would have panic attacks and freak out at night, he would call Marilyn, and that way he could hear Marilyn's scooter putting up the road. But he had a 1-bedroom apartment. He said it was big enough for him to have a grand piano in there and pretty much nothing else. And he would just hole himself up in there, lock himself up, lay on the floor, stare at the ceiling, basically meditate, getting himself into this zone, creating music. And he said, I would lay there and I would pick apart different things that I was going to do. I would orchestrate them in my mind. I would write the parts here. And he goes, it became kind of troublesome because I was really defining what I wanted our sound to be, and none of the other Beach Boys could hear inside my head to know what I was hearing. And so sometimes they weren't anywhere close to knowing what we were going to have the song sound like until it was finished. And that was a lot of pressure on Brian. So one day when he had first moved in here, about a week into the move, the Beach Boys were taken off for an Australian tour, and Marilyn rode with all the guys to the airport. And Mike, Love, and Dennis, apparently, so they say, in the car just kept talking about like how many brothels and how many different girls that they wanted to pick up. And since Marilyn was there, Mike Love started like screwing with Brian and was like, hey Brian, how many girls are you gonna get? And he's like, Brian just wanting to like fit in, because he was always kind of a little he was always a bit awkward around the other guys. He'd say, I want them all. And Marilyn just was like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna have my fun while you're away too. And this just shot up Brian's spine, like he never expected her to say that. And he said, what do you mean by that? And she said, ask Mike. Mike knows what I mean. Because Mike apparently in those days was known for pretty much sleeping with everybody, and actually had impregnated his girlfriend right at the beginning of the Beach Boys, almost thinking that he might not be a Beach Boy because he would have to quit at some point. But anyway, they flew to Australia, and Brian kept thinking about everything that Marilyn said the whole ride there. He was freaking out the whole way there. Even had the pilot make a call and get in touch with Marilyn and tell Marilyn that he loved her and everything. And then when he landed in Australia, he called her and said that he was scared to death that she was out with somebody else, like she said she was going to be. And she reassured him that she was only 16 and that she wasn't going to go see anybody else. But he told her right then and there, like, the thought of losing you is more than I can take. I want to get married. And she was only 16, and though her parents did love him, that puts them in a weird position, because after the tour in Australia was over, I think it was a week or a 2-week tour, by the time he got back, he wasn't letting up. He still was absolutely diehard in this idea of marrying Marilyn. And so they sat down, they made a date. They were all going to drive to Vegas with her parents, and they were going to do this wedding. And it was supposed to be, I believe, the 1st of December. And so they drove to Vegas, got to Vegas and realized that Brian had forgot to bring his birth certificate, and called here, asked Mike Love to root around his stuff and find the birth certificate. Mike couldn't find it, so they ended up having to cancel the wedding, come back, find the birth certificate, and then a week later on December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day, they went back out to Vegas and were married. Now, shortly after they were married, Marilyn, of course, had moved in, being 16 years old, still being in high school, and Brian had started kind of writing songs and producing songs for her and her sisters to do a band called the Honeys. And so Brian had always kind of had this attraction to all of the sisters, primarily Marilyn, but also the younger sister Barbara. And when he would stay over there and visit, he would always just kind of play around with all of them. And even later in life, he would kind of develop a thing for Diane, and that would kind of help end the marriage. But one night while he and Marilyn were laying in bed and they were kissing and everything, Brian said, "I love you, Barbara," and Marilyn shot up out of bed and said, "What do you mean, Barbara? Why, you love my sister? If you love my sister, why did you marry me?" And he said, "No, I love you. I don't love Barbara." But he secretly kind of always felt that he loved them all. It was almost hard to choose, but he always knew he would be with Marilyn because Marilyn was the motherly one of the three. Marilyn was the one that in her life needed someone to take care of, needed someone to be a mother to, and so that was an immediate attraction to him because he never really felt like he got the kind of mothering that he wanted in his life. But just think, I mean, one of these outward apartments that we're looking at out here would have been Brian Wilson's 2-bedroom apartment. That before they were married, he would have been sitting up on that windowsill waiting for Marilyn to putt up and down this street on her little scooter. And the ending to the whole scenario here at this apartment was that basically once he was able to calm Marilyn down and assure her that it was her that he loved and not Barbara, Marilyn looked at him and said, "I don't like this apartment anymore. I don't want to live here anymore." And they moved out right away after. And where they moved to was the apartment that I vlogged that time over on Gardner across from the fire station, where Brian would eventually end up experimenting with drugs. And you know what's so interesting about seeing this building is that, I know I told you guys when I did another Brian Wilson vlog that when I first moved here, the first 2 months, I was really obsessed with listening to Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys music, and I was getting every book I could find. And so when I was reading these books and studying up and learning about Brian and reading the stories about this apartment but not knowing the address until now, it's funny to know that the days that I was reading that book, I was actually literally living 2 blocks down this street, and when I was reading the book, I was literally 1 block away from here at a coffee shop, and I could have looked over my shoulder and seen this apartment building while I was reading it. And that whole time I was reading it, I kept just wondering, God, I wonder if I'll ever know which apartment up and down Hollywood Boulevard that was that he lived at. And there it is, 7235. All right, let's go start Runyon Canyon now and get this over with. It's super hot, and I'm about an hour and a half later than I wanted to be starting this. So that's now 2 Brian Wilson vlogs that I've told you about 2 different freakouts on airplanes. That should help illustrate a little bit of the reason why Brian felt that he couldn't and shouldn't be a traveling, touring Beach Boy any longer, and that he would eventually make the transition into being the full-time writer, composer, producer of the band. I read up a lot of history on this place yesterday. I'll have to vlog it pretty soon. I could get a handful of vlogs out of this because I found stuff that went all the way back to 1860. All right, see you at the top, guys. Check out that house. I just noticed from looking over this cliff that there's another building down there that I have not shown you guys. I'm gonna have to go by and take a look at that. Not today, but next time we're up here. So after doing this for like 2 weeks, the last time that I did this, I decided to come down this way, where you have to jump down more and jump over these little logs and all the stairs and everything. And I noticed that night that my abs were hurting a lot more, so I decided I'm going to do this way down a little bit more often. The day before I went to see the Walk of Fame ceremony for Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell, I was on the website looking at trying to find out what the address was going to be, where I needed to be, and I actually found an email address to inquire for press credentials. And I actually thought, geez, maybe I should just try and apply for press credentials, and then I can get like an actual interview with them. And I didn't do it because I just for some reason thought that my channel and what I'm doing wasn't important enough. And then today when I flipped on my YouTube, one of the recommended videos was a close-up interview on the red carpet right after they got their star. And it was some YouTube channel I'd never heard of. And they only had 500 views on their video, and my video has over 4,000 in less than a week. So next time, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and send an email, see if I can't get myself some press credentials, because when I showed up there with my camera, they thought I was press anyway, until I said that I wasn't, and then he's like, oh, you have to go wait in this line or whatever, but next time. All right, guys, I have to go work. It's that time, and on my way over, I actually did the cool part of the vlog for tomorrow today, and boy, was it awesome. I can't wait for you guys to watch it. It was a total thrill to see. But I have to go work now, so if there's anything to show you while I'm working, you know I'll show you. If not, this could be the end of our day. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the Brian Wilson apartment today. Not a positive story probably, but part of his history and the first apartment that he lived in Los Angeles, and the first one he had on his own, so hope it was worth seeing for you all. I'm gonna have to go to this old Good Things place. See those animals on the roof. In 900 feet. Check out the bar. This is the back lighting of the bar at this place. Classic. I do believe I'd have nightmares if this were my apartment, though.